Hey y'all, hi. So today's video is me playing with products from NARS that have been released since I basically checked out of NARS land. The history is this. NARS used to be my go-to makeup brand, my aspirational makeup brand, my dream makeup brand. It's like when I first started getting into makeup, the packaging, the sophistication, the makeup artistry, the colors. NARS just seemed like the pinnacle to me. And even as I learned more about different makeup brands and the different things that they had to offer, I would always default to NARS if the thing that I wanted was offered by NARS. So I used to be sort of a NARS expert. I had tried so much from the brand. I had recommendations about colors and formulas, different eyeshadows. I'd tried the duos. I'd tried the blushes, all of these different lipstick formulas. They used to have this really amazing sort of like liquidy lip pigment, kind of like a liquid lipstick and kind of like a stain. I was just a NARS girl. And I was like that when I started my YouTube channel, actually. And during my no-buy year in 2018, which was my first year on YouTube, the NARS launches, the NARS makeup launches, were the hardest ones for me to resist. So I was surprised to find over the past couple of years that NARS has started to kind of lose me. And I've been noticing it in new makeup hot takes. When I see a new release from NARS and I talk about it in new makeup hot takes, it seems like every time I film a new makeup hot takes, I'm less and less excited about whatever it is that NARS is doing. So I realized recently that I got to the point where not only was I no longer a NARS girl, but I was totally out of touch with what NARS is doing now, because it had been forever since I tried anything new. And there are all of these things that have come out over the past year or two that have kind of been holding down the fort for the brand, making a splash on social media that I haven't looked twice at and that I haven't tried. So I asked you in a recent video if you wanted to see me revisit NARS and particularly visit and review the top 5 products, in my opinion, that are of interest that have released since I stopped paying attention. And that's what I'm doing here. So it's not absolutely everything, but it is, it is this full face, like everything that I have on except for brows. And there are a couple of quite new releases of interest, most notably the Afterglow liquid blush, which is brand new, the powder foundation, of these lip balms. So it's like, what has NARS been doing recently? And what do I think about the brand after all of this history and after all of these years and after all the experience that I've gained reviewing makeup, testing it? What is it like to me now? How is it striking me now? If you're new to my channel today, if this is your first time watching, I hope you'll consider subscribing. I'm Hannah. I make videos about makeup and fashion. I'm really interested in aesthetics. I'm really interested in consumerism. And I touch on those concepts from a bunch of different angles in my content, including, in its own way, the thing you're watching now. So let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Okay, y'all, I'm so ready to get some makeup on my face, and actually, the first thing I need to do is to put something on my lips. They're super parched, and I happen to know, because this is the only thing that I have actually tested. All of this stuff arrived yesterday, and I opened it, and I was like, ooh, this is gonna be so fun to test tomorrow. And then this, the Afterglow Balm in the shade Fast Lane, I just put it on my lips because I was curious, and my lips are feeling dry. So I happen to know something about this, whereas with the other products, I know nothing. And the thing that I know is that it's clear. It just doesn't have a lot of pigment in it. And the packaging is beautiful. It's like fresh NARS. I think this is a pretty new release. There's how it looks. NARS. It's fine to release a clear balm. I'm not saying it's a problem or like a very sheer balm. It's just, they make it look like great shakes on the website, on the listings, on Sephora. It looked like I was making a critical decision, like deciding between this and the other 4 colors. But I think really they all probably look almost exactly the same. Yeah, you can kind of see a lavender, like a slightly cool mauve color there. So maybe I take it back. Maybe it would really look like a different color if I had a different color. But the point is that it has the level of sheerness that's required for something to be used willy-nilly, without thought, without worrying about what else you have on your face. Something you can totally use when you're wearing no other makeup, and it's not gonna look like you weirdly have makeup on your lips but nowhere else. It truly is a tinted lip balm, a lip treatment that has just a tiny bit of color in it, which is why, to bring it full circle, I feel fine just slathering it on my lips right now to hydrate them as I begin the video, basically, even though I haven't even touched my complexion yet, because to me, this is something that I will reach for mostly because my lips are feeling dry and not because I want them to look a certain way. And you don't have to spend NARS prices to get something that'll do that. So in some ways, it's a little bit of a flop, like all things considered, maybe a little bit of a flop, but I know that I am going to love love having this and I'm going to wear it all the time because I love that kind of thing. I love having something that I can just grab and slap on. It has like a little something something, but isn't really makeup-y makeup. There's a close-up of the swatch before I wipe it off. I know I didn't give you a close-up before, but honestly, I feel like the way it looks from a distance and the way it looks on my lips matters more. Okay, let's get into the meat of the meat. I, Hannah Louise Poston, am testing a foundation. I dropped a chunk of my review budget on a foundation. Kind of a serious chunk. It's $50. And I'm not out here reviewing foundation because I don't wear foundation really ever. So it just hurt. I was like, foundation's expensive. But I felt like I had to do it because if I'm doing a review, and I mean that with the EU spelling, is that right? Like a Broadway review. If I'm doing a review of the key drops from NARS, basically since I checked out of the game, the NARS game, I just had to cover one of their foundations because I feel like they've released a lot of new foundations over the last year or two. And this is the Light Reflecting Foundation. I think it has a longer name than it says on the bottle. I think it's called like the Light Reflecting Skin Caring Foundation. Am I getting that right? Anyway, the last time I was paying any attention to NARS, Sheer Glow, like NARS Sheer Glow, the foundation, the age-old NARS foundation, was their freshest foundation. So that's why I decided to eat it and review this. Let's look at the shade. It's in Siberia, which is the shade that I actually wore in Sheer Glow because that was the foundation that I used for photo shoots for my clothing brand. So I've never been someone to wear a full face of foundation every day. But back in the day when I was having to photograph the clothes that I had made each week in order to put them on my website, and I was modeling them, I was doing a full face of makeup for photography, for product photography every week, and I would put on foundation for that because just, you know, to show up under the lights, etc. And the one that I settled on was NARS Sheer Glow. So I'm familiar with how it used to be. And I know my shade, or at least what I used to think my shade was. Incidentally, Sheer Glow wasn't sheer at all. The idea was that the glow was sheer. It was like a full coverage foundation with a sheer amount of glow. I feel like they really could have workshopped that a little bit longer. So as I remembered, it's very yellow. It's very bright and very yellow. Back in the day, I felt that one of the reasons that NARS was my brand was that the shade range runs very yellow. Especially, I know it does at the lighter end. I don't know if it does all the way through, but I have heard that it does. That's just anecdotal. My own experience is just with the light shades, and I know that it runs quite yellow. Now I know that I don't just have a warm, pale complexion, I have a desaturated kind of olive complexion. So I'm worried it'll be too bright and too yellow. Let's compare to some other things. At the top here, I'm putting the Rose Ink Concealer, which you can see is blending in much better to my skin. So this is the lightest shade of the Rose Ink Concealer, LX010. Great shade match for me. Again, because it has more gray mixed in, it's desaturated. Here is, underneath that, RMS foundation. A little more on the yellow side than the Rose Ink, but also much less yellow and saturated than the NARS. And underneath that, I'm going to put this ColourPop concealer, Fair 05W. It's ColourPop's warm shade offering, and you can see it's closest to the NARS foundation in Siberia of the three, but it's also much brighter, right? It's like brighter and whiter. There are all of those swatches up close. So of course, the big one is NARS Siberia, and then from top to bottom, we've got the Rose Ink Concealer, the RMS foundation in the lightest shade, and the ColourPop concealer underneath. And I'll link all of that down below. So Siberia is making these other swatches look positively peach, and they never look peach. And also, as it sits there and dries, it's looking nice and watery. Like it's looking like it's more serum-y than I remember Sheer Glow being. And I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like to put it on my face. But shade-wise, we can see, just from those comparisons, that NARS is still doing this thing where the lightest shades are just extremely saturated and extremely yellow. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I've moved away from the brand over the years, as I've learned more about my undertone and everything. I have a secret weapon. Into this same order for review, I placed the new Givenchy Prism Libre skin caring corrector. Maybe that is why I thought that the NARS thing was called skin caring. I bet it's not. I bet I was getting it mixed up with the Givenchy. This launched not too long ago, not like last week, but it recently, I think, trickled into Sephora. And when it launched and I talked about it in New Makeup Hot Takes, I said that I would review it. Green color corrector is because there aren't very many of these types of things for me, like genres of makeup or categories of makeup that I pretty much always review no matter what the price point is. It's kind of just green color corrector for me. I am like making myself into a green color corrector aficionado on YouTube. And this is a particularly fascinating launch in the realm of green color corrector. So I saw that it had finally made it to Sephora. I put it in with these things and I was kind of thinking that if I was really struggling with the shade of the foundation, I could use the green color corrector to balance it out. All right, without further ado, I'm gonna use a sponge because I'm into sponges right now. I'm having a sponge moment. Oh, I didn't prime my skin, but you know, it's very plump and moisturized. I have a lot of layers of skincare on and it's been sinking in for a long time. So I actually feel like my skin is in really good shape to receive foundation. And if this were just a normal makeup day or I was just putting on makeup for my own sake, I probably wouldn't use an additional primer. So let's go for it. Ooh, it's nice, the texture, because it's not too full coverage. I mean, I only used a little bit because that's how I roll, but it's nice. It's feeling quite dewy around here. I really like how it applied here, but like that's the part of my face that's the easiest for me to apply face makeup to. You know what I mean? It pretty much always looks good right there. Down here, I struggle a little bit more. Let's see how much it sets over the next few minutes. My forehead is fine. It doesn't really need the coverage, but I need to make it match the rest, you know, because it really is changing. It really is brightening that redness on my skin. The forehead will often tell the tale. You know what I mean? It tends to be a little bit dry. I don't have Botox, so I have all those little fine lines. And yeah, it's doing that thing where it feels like it's just dyeing my skin. It's really, really thin. That is very different from how Sheer Glow was. That was like a foundation that I was painting on. This feels like a skin tint, but the kind of skin tint I like where it's high in pigment and it's just really liquidy rather than being like a lotion with a little bit of pigment mixed in. I'm impressed. And color-wise, it's not giving me as much trouble as I worried that it would. Because, you know, my skin, my actual skin, like my neck, is quite bright and yellow. It looks like a good match from here. It looks really good up close too. It looks very skin-like. Yeah, like you can't really see it sitting on my skin. I kind of like it. I thought I was gonna be like, no, it's a foundation. It's way too bright and yellow and expensive. I would rather just stick to my concealers and stuff. But I like it. I feel like I've become disillusioned over the years about skin tint because they never work for me. They just sit on top of my skin and the pigment sort of gathers, you know? But when I originally came across the concept of a skin tint years ago, this is like what I was hoping it would do. Like this is what my dream skin tint does. And I just didn't expect this to do that because it's a foundation. Like it's supposed to be a foundation. So that was 2 drops and there was a little bit left, like really little drops, not full pumps. And there's a little bit left, but I'm adding a little bit more to do the other side. Let's see what kind of coverage we get down here where I had those blemishes. Because, you know, part of why I like how it's sitting on my skin is that I'm just applying a teeny tiny bit. I'm applying it in the manner of someone who wants tinted skin rather than covered skin. So it did soften the look of the redness, the sort of angry look of those blemishes, but it didn't cover them. It didn't do that thing where it's like, whoa, they're totally blending into the rest of my skin with, again, a very light layer. And these are pretty much healing blemishes right here, but they were active very recently. What it did though was it got me to a place where I could easily just spot conceal them and have them blend in and that would be it. And I don't need to apply another layer like to my whole skin, which is what I prefer to do. I might go back in a second and see how it builds, but if it were a normal day, I would just go in with spot conceal on top of this amount of coverage because this is an amount of coverage, this really thin one with the skin, just overall brightening that I really, really, really like. I've basically made my face match my neck in one pretty easy step without ending up looking like I have makeup caked onto my face. I'm shocked. I almost didn't order this. I almost didn't include this in the review because I was like, I'm not a foundation type of bee and I'm probably just gonna hate it. Texture, the color, it's probably just gonna be like, oh, this is all wrong for me. But I gave it the old college try because that's my job. Like that's what I have been expecting. And now I'm like, can't wait to wear it tomorrow. Right, so let's see if I can get it to build. My neck looks a little greener than my face, a little. Maybe I'll put on a tiny bit of the color corrector and see what it's like. But I think that a true review of that Givenchy color corrector is gonna have to wait until another day because I don't need it as badly as I thought I did. Let's see what I can get with like another layer just on this spot. So it did build on itself, but a couple of things are happening. One, in person, and I'm, just really picky about exact tone. In person, it is starting to oxidize a little bit. It just dries down a little bit darker than it goes on. So when I got up close into the mirror to tap some more coverage on that spot, I could sort of see a little bit of like a line of demarcation where my face was darker than my neck. I feel pretty confident that it'll be difficult to see that on camera because everything is so brightened by the lights. But the fact that it is so saturated and yellow is starting to come through just a touch more, like one little click on the dial more as it actually kind of sets and dries. It's definitely not making it unwearable for me. And in fact, I will often correct a thing like that by just bronzing up my neck a little bit, something I kind of like to do anyway because it's just so bright and whitish green. I think that I'm still going to continue to experiment with this, and I still feel pretty optimistic about it. I did want to make a note of that. I might have been a bit more excited about the initial effect than I'm going to end up being about the overall use value of the product. The other thing is that as I was building it, as I was trying to build it, I could tell that I could get a more full coverage look if I wanted to. I think it does build beautifully on itself. The formula allows for that. However, I'll never wear it like that. I'm just not that kind of makeup wearer. I'm always going to be wearing it like this. It's definitely like a tint level of coverage when you wear it like this. But I love that it does a really good job dyeing. It feels like it's dyed the surface of my skin, and then I'm just left needing to spot conceal a little bit. I just love that effect. To spot conceal, I always use the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer, and I think it makes sense to use it for this too, because it's a NARS product. However, I just realized that I forgot to bring it down here and I have to go up 2 floors, get it, and bring it down. But it's good because I'll get a chance to move around in the makeup for a second. I'll check it in the other mirrors of the house and see if I have anything more to say when I get back down here. Okay, I'm actually really glad that I did that. I have my things. I looked at my skin really close in a couple of different mirrors, one with like the daylight bulbs of my vanity mirror, which are really bright. And I also looked at my face in some of the mirrors with daylight coming in. So like natural light and no artificial light. And here's what I gathered. It is a bit yellow. I think that I was delighted when I first looked at it, when I was first applying it, because it had that kind of brightness. And it has dried down to feel a bit yellow. Like I looked at the mirror and I was like, oh, I look yellow. And because of that, it looks a little more like makeup than I think it would with its really lovely thin texture if it were more desaturated, if they had a grayer pale shade. Not pinker, not more peach, but actually grayer. So I could see myself using it basically to even out large surface areas that have light scarring, like light blotchiness, like I do have on my cheeks because of blemishes, in a very thin layer on top of color corrected skin or maybe mixed with color corrector in the future. I'm definitely gonna have to play with it more before I can be sure that it's something that I want to keep and use consistently, which is what I was thinking. As soon as I put it on, I was like, wow, the texture of this has blown me away and the color looks fine, so I'm gonna keep it and use it consistently. Now I think the color might be leaving a bit more to be desired than I initially thought. Basically what I thought it was gonna be like based on the swatches in the back of my hand. But I'm still quite impressed by the way it applied and by how incredibly thin it is on the skin, even though it has set to actually not a super luminous finish. Like it definitely lost that initial dewiness. I would actually almost say it's a soft matte, but it's just so incredibly thin. It feels like there's fancy technology in it. You know what I mean? Like it has something like spheres or platelets or something. Like it's like, how can it be so thin? How can it be such a like sprayed on second skin and still be giving me coverage and still feel sturdy? So that's pretty cool. I'm just gonna quickly spot conceal. I use the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer in the shade Chantilly. I've used it for years. It is the lightest shade of this. It's not as yellow. It's a little bit more neutral. It's a little neutral, a little dark, and that works well for me for spot concealing because it's sort of causing those blemished spots to fade in and sink in rather than brightening them. And what I've been doing lately is setting that cream concealer on those spots with a powder foundation. The one that I've been using is the one from ColourPop, the Pretty Fresh foundation. Shade works fine for me. It's pretty skin refining and it comes with this convenient little poof that I just use to pick up the powder and then pack it on basically to places where I was spot concealed. And then sometimes I'll use a little bit of a brush to lightly set other areas of my face face if I feel like they're getting quite dewy. So NARS has released a version of this, a powder foundation designed to be used in exactly the same way, and I think can be used also just all over the face as a foundation. My skin's too dry for that, but when this was first released a couple of months ago at this point, I really perked up. I was like, I'm very curious about that because it feels like the refined high-end version of a product that I use daily. And I think at that time actually had lost the ColourPop powder and I couldn't find it. So I was looking to replace that kind of product, and then this was launched and I was like, oh, I should just get the NARS one. It immediately sold out in Cliff, the lightest shade, and was sold out for a long time. And only now, getting stuff together for this review, did I get myself together to check to see if it was in stock at a time when it actually was in stock. So my first impressions of it are favorable because look how much lighter it is than the ColourPop. So the brightness of this might make it a little bit less ideal for setting blemishes because again, I don't want to brighten them, but I think it will make it more ideal for setting the rest of my face. Just brushing a little bit of extra coverage and a little bit of shine dampening over other parts of my face. And ironically, it might help brighten the like slightly dark yellowness of the NARS foundation. The thing that I wish about this is that it had some kind of puff or pad. I guess most people are going to be applying this with a brush, like a powder foundation you buff on with a brush. I guess that's what they're imagining, but I've gotten so used to the ColourPop one that I opened it and I was like, where's the poof? Like, where's the little pad that I need to get that packed coverage on blemishes? Because it doesn't come with that, I'm just gonna go in with the brush that I used in the cream concealer. It's just what I would do, I think, normally, and see how it does at that job. Okay, it looks so seamless and soft focus. Ooh, I'm excited to put it on other parts of my skin. Maybe a little bit pink, you know, maybe a little bit bright and pink for me, but I'm not planning to pack it on in a way that would make that a problem. What I want to know is how it does with texture here. Wow. It's mattifying. It definitely has that like texture erasing quality that great powders have, you know? I'm ending up using more than I thought that I would want to, partly for the brightening and also just, well, I'm not using more because I'm not caking on a lot. I'm just putting it, I'm brushing it all over my whole face, which I wasn't expecting to do. I was expecting to just set blemished areas and then maybe like a little bit of T-zone, but it's like I want it everywhere. So, you know, I'm ending up already, even though I'm applying everything so lightly as I'm wont to do, I'm ending up already with a more made up complexion, more polished, done face than I usually have. I usually try to even out my skin while maintaining a look of very little makeup in terms of the texture. And it's not as though it's caking. In fact, it's so pretty. Like the surface of the skin looks so pretty. But just by default, if you put on a foundation, even a thin layer, and then you powder it all over, you're just gonna look like you're wearing makeup. You know what I mean? Like it's just gonna look a little bit more like a look. So going forward, I will probably experiment with using these products more judiciously, not necessarily layering like a full face and a full face, but a little bit of foundation in a couple of key areas, a little bit of powder in other key areas, getting something a bit more natural, but still reaping the benefits of both. Formulaically though, they've impressed me. NARS just, it makes nice things, nice products. I mean, I guess I always did know that. And they just lost me a little with the color cosmetics. That's the thing. It's like the color cosmetics that are the ones that make a splash that have been so repetitive, and that's what's lost me. But these baseline products, like base product, heavy duty makeup, they're nice. I just wish that they would make more desaturated shades. Okay, speaking of color cosmetics, and even though I just powdered my cheeks, I'm not afraid to put a cream over a powder. And it's because I don't use that much powder. That's why. It's because I'm often just like brushing a light layer on. But it's also just I'm trying to test all of these products. This is the newest launch from NARS, the Afterglow Liquid Blush. Of course, I got it in the shade Behave. It's the palest and least saturated of the colors, but it's still pretty saturated and kind of a pink. I mean, they were saying it was a pale mauve. I don't know if I would call this pale mauve. It's just like pink, isn't it? It doesn't feel dinky to me. Not as dinky as I thought. I remember when I saw the launch, I was like, it was hard to tell how big it was, how big the doe foot was. It feels like serviceably beefy. I'm not over here feeling like it's a floating little piece of garbage, you know? So that's good to know, but I'm not sure about this color. Man, when this released, not launched or released, when this was announced on Trend Mood, and I saw those juicy jelly-like drops that they were using as swatches to show the colors, I was so optimistic that this one would be sort of a grayish pale mauve. It really looked from those swatches like one of them promised to give us something less punchy, like a little bit of desaturation, and it's just not doing that at all. It's just a straight pink. It's not struggling to go over the powder at all. And again, I mean, I only had the tiniest bit of powder here. The formula is very beautiful. I think it's like a version of the M Cosmetics Color Drop Serum blushes that is setting down a little more, like just a little sturdier, but it's leaving that slightly dewy, really healthy skin look behind, and I quite love that. I don't think that the color looks terrible. You know what I mean? Like it's fine. It's a fine color for me. It's just boring. Like the color's boring and not innovative. And that's the thing about what NARS keeps doing and doing and doing that has caused me to sort of drift away from the brand. In that way, it's a little bit of a letdown because when I saw the launch, I was like, oh, maybe they're finally throwing me a bone. And they aren't. In terms of formula, they're still nailing it. I feel that way about the lip product too. And actually, the more I've put on complexion products and taken that redness out of my skin, even my skin tone, the more colorful it has looked, like the prettier it's looked, the more the saturation's coming through, and yet it's no less easy to just throw it on. You know, it's still got that sheerness. So it's just beautiful. Like the lip, I mean, it's just beautiful. It's just the color's not original in any way. It doesn't have that sophisticated subtlety of shade that I think I used to always expect I would get from NARS back in the day, and that was one of the things that originally turned me on to them. The really cool blush shades that they used to have. And I don't mean cool toned, I mean cool, like interesting, different, slightly off the beaten path, and often grungy. And the lip colors as well. I feel like they've just come all the way to the center with the colors that they offer. And even though I feel like my own makeup tastes have also come a little bit to the center lately, color-wise, I'm still looking for that thrill. You know what I mean? I'm still looking for that muted, grungy stuff, and just nowhere to be found. I thought that it might be based on the listings with some of these things, but it's just not. Okay, lastly, I have the mascara. I decided not to get any NARS eyeshadow because I have a pretty recent eyeshadow palette release that Khaki gave me. So I've used it, and what I found is that the NARS eyeshadow formula hasn't really changed. And I've been using the NARS eyeshadow formula, again, for years. Back in the day, I used to use those NARS eyeshadows all the time. Kind of cut my teeth on NARS eyeshadows. So I didn't feel like I needed to investigate current NARS eyeshadow formulas. They're great. They're pigmented. The mattes are easy to blend. The interesting textured shades, they're textured in a subtle way, a polished, like luxury makeup way, but they really deliver what they show, what they look like they're going to deliver. And recently, none of the color stories have really gripped me. So that's another reason that I was like, no, I can just give eyeshadow a pass. And also, a lot of times I do makeup and I don't put eyeshadow on. This is definitely a real representation of the kind of makeup that I do, just all NARS. It's the Climax mascara. This has been out for years, right? I just got the mini because I was using $50 of my budget on foundation. So this has been out for a long time and I've never tried it. I've never even had a sample of it. It has a big, fluffy, dense brush, which, if what the legend says is true, should deliver big, fluffy, dense lashes. And I'm into a fluffy lash right now. Kind of is delivering a fluffy lash. Not me immediately wishing I'd gotten the full size. So the thing that's impressing me, and I know it's a little bit hard to tell with mascara right out of the gate. Of course, I'll be reporting back about all of this over time. But the thing that's impressing me is that it's not gunking onto my lashes. It's staying feathery. It's just making them fluffy. Longer, yes. Darker, yes. And fluffy, which is what I'm into right now. So it feels like that's about the limit. It feels like if I were to keep dipping in and going back and layering a lot on that eye, it would start to build something gunkier, which, you know, sometimes I do like to do. But I'm more interested in how this is going to treat me in the everyday. And I think it might treat me well. It's like a surprisingly full, lovely, fluffy lash without it getting weird. The brush is a little unwieldy. It feels like kind of a blunt instrument because it's just got so many bristles. Just got some of it directly into my eye and it didn't sting or anything. So I can report back about that. That's good. And yeah, I went back and built a little bit more on top of both sets of lashes after the first coat had really set. And it's lovely. It's dramatic, but refined. It's interesting. I feel like this mascara, which is sort of currently NARS's main gig in the mascara games, in the mascara Hunger Games, it shows that there are things about this brand, and this is my thesis. Final thoughts. We're bringing it home. I've developed my thesis and I'll now deliver it to you. It shows that there are things about this brand that I am realigning with as I age and as my makeup style changes and my preferences change. I recently made a whole video about my makeup style and preferences changing. I'll link that in the cards right now in case you haven't seen it and you'd like to get a little bit more perspective on the context for this video. A lash like this that's dramatic but refined, where I can build, get the length and volume, but without it going comic book, you know, without it going false lash. That is lately what I want, right? As I get closer and closer to 40. I feel like if a brand has just one mascara, kind of, in some cases you can distinguish the character of the brand and maybe even like their ideal customer from what that mascara delivers. And this is exactly what I want from a mascara. And so in certain ways, again, formula, in terms of the formulas, the way that each of the formulas is to use, like the way that it goes on, the way that it interacts with the skin, the way that it wears, and frankly, packaging, like the level of the packaging, it's all very aligned. I am the NARS customer in a way that I think I maybe wasn't in my late 20s, early 30s, which is when I was really into NARS. And that does kind of make me want to pay a little bit more attention to offerings from the brand that aren't blighted by what I see as the main issue, which is a really conservative and uncreative sense of color. And it disappoints me so much because I think a really rich editorial sense of color is what drove me into the arms of NARS to begin with. So it feels like something has changed. It feels like there's somebody over there sitting at the top of the pyramid at NARS who's just really conservative about color and who thinks that we don't want interesting colors right now. And every time somebody brings something to the table that's slightly off in terms of pigment, that person is like, no, and they bang their gavel and then that plan gets canceled. That's what I imagine is going on. And I'm not saying it doesn't look good. I mean, the makeup looks great because the colors are fine and the formulas are beautiful. It's just, I want a little something more. There's a lot of makeup that looks great. And there are a lot of colors like this out there, and there are many pretty decent formulas out there. So for something to really have my heart, it has to have that nuance. And what I would say at this stage, having revisited NARS after all this time, is that it has my respect. I think the brand has my respect more than I thought that it would, based on the absolute serve that is basically every single one of these formulas. It has my respect, but it just doesn't have my heart. It hasn't managed to get my heart back. And it won't until we get some grayish blushes and some desaturated nudes. And ideally, some pale olive complexion. But I don't think they're ever going to change in that way. And I wasn't expecting them to. That's not what I was hoping for going into this video. I was hoping for something a little bit more innovative in these departments. I'm happy to have this makeup though. That's the thing that's interesting. I think I'm going to be wearing this a lot, the lip a lot. And I will probably reach for the blush more than I think because I like the finish of it. It has pretty much set down. It wouldn't, I don't think, be grabbing at my hair if my hair were down. It's nice. There's a lot to be said for extremely well-performing pretty makeup. And I think I will end up defaulting to some of these products because that's what they are. I think I would say at this stage, I'm particularly excited about the powder foundation. I'm curious to know what it'll be like to use that to powder my T-zone on top of my other complexion products. It was just so creamy and pigmented feeling, like the brush picked up so much of it and it was so easy to lay it down on my skin and it had that really lovely blurring property. It's just so many worlds ahead of like the ColourPop one that I've been using, that I've grown used to. I think maybe of all of these products, this is the one that delivered exactly what I was hoping for and more. Everything else sort of surprised me a little bit in one way or another. Maybe it was like part success, part letdown, you know? And this was like all success, all promise. So that's cool. And actually the mascara, although I didn't really have any expectations of it, I didn't know what it was going to be like. In terms of expectation and reality, the powder, curiously, is the thing that really hit it. Okay, I'm gonna go. I think I've done it and I've told you everything that I can. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're subscribed. I appreciate you, all of you who are always liking the videos and commenting. Thank you for all of that. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work.